My name is Carol Saunders, and I am your worship leader this morning. And one thing I love about this congregation is a place I can step into, take a deep breath, close my eyes, and know I'm safe. Safe to feel, to think, to discuss divergently, and to give others that kind of space of listening, of feeling, by thinking and by discussing with heart. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. I want to take a moment to extend a very warm welcome to everyone. If you're joining us online, fill out a visitor form in the link and the description, and we'd love to connect with you. And some of us are bringing our best selves to this space, and some of us are bringing our struggling selves. All of us are welcome here, and all of us are loved. Some of us already have open hearts, and some of us aren't quite there yet because our hearts haven't gotten a little beat up maybe over the week and aren't quite trusting to feel open. But your heart is welcome here, no matter how it's bruised. We welcome you. All of us are imperfect, but we're here to drop our defenses and trust that what happens in worship is powerful and life-giving. Together we affirm that this day and our being together can make each of us braver, more compassionate, and wiser than when we woke up this morning. We welcome you here. A couple of people are going to make announcements. Jack Doggett and then Dr. Emily.
Thanks, Carol. So Jack Doggett, along with Susan Secord, are your co-chairs of this year's pledge drive. The theme is Ready for the Journey. Seemed appropriate considering the growth that we've experienced and trying to keep up with all our wonderful members and new people who are seeking connection here. We're right at 60%, and I know a number of people have said, oh, I'm going to get mine in, I forgot, or can I do it online? And the answer is yes, you can do it online. And a couple of times during the service, we're going to show the QR code for accessing the pledge form. So thank you very much. I just want to share, part of this role. I know some of you feel comfortable with fundraising, and some of you think that I'd rather drop a heavy object on my toe than to engage in fundraising. But this morning, and last week to some extent, but this morning it's fresh for me, the number of people coming through the door with a big smile on their face and handing me a white envelope, it's such a thrill. And I sense that from the people handing it in. So this is this act of co-creation that we're all engaged in. There's a hymn, very simple hymn, from you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and by this we live. And that's been resonating for me this morning. So thank you, everyone who's contributed in this exercise of funding our needs to serve each other. Thank you.
I have two announcements, actually. The first one is if you look over at the piano, don't panic. Our beloved collaborative pianist, Austin Skeffington, is taking a well-needed vacation Sunday. He's doing a little bit of traveling, and we're delighted to have Paula Staffeld back on the piano bench this week. Paula brings decades of experience as a professional church musician. And so we are very thrilled that she's a ace up our sleeve anytime that we need anything. Paula is there and ready, and we're so grateful. And I also want to let you know that next Sunday is going to be great. It's our annual Music Sunday, and so this space will be filled with 60 singers, not just our choir, but also the choir from the Boulder Valley Fellowship. We will be just packing this space, and we will be singing every feeling that you could possibly have at this time. The theme of the service is songs of hope and resilience. So we're going to, as we have been doing since November, look bravely at how we're feeling, and really dig deep, connect to each other, connect bravely, and think about how we are going to move forward in this time. And we're going to do that in song form. So we hope that you will bring your hearts in whatever state they're in, just like you do every Sunday, prepared to be moved. We promise that there will be space for you, so don't be scared. But we just want you to know that that's going to be happening, and I hope that you'll tell all your friends and that you will join us for a big old party next Sunday morning.
Our chalice is the symbol of the Unitarian Universalist faith, and it suggests perhaps that within our separate selves burns a flame of unity and connection and compassion, and once felt, that fire cannot be extinguished, and so we gather, weaving our lives together. I'd like to invite Ian Holmes to light this morning's chalice.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you, everyone. The Unitarian Universalist Church has been close to me since I left home for grad school about 10 years ago. Not in a spiritual or religious sense, but pure physical proximity. In Minnesota, the Unity Unitarian Church was just down the street from me, and I'd walk by it going to get coffee. When I moved to Massachusetts, the First Parish Unitarian Church of Watertown was just up the hill on my way to go play basketball. And in Fort Collins, the Foothills Unitarian abutted the park where I'd play tennis. So it's always been, kind of right there. And as I went by each one of them, I saw the messages of welcome and openness and knew that they were full of good people with shared values. As I kept finding myself alone in places far from home and without a community, I had UU in the back of my head, but life and priorities change and shift, and so I never really followed through. Fast forward a decade, and in the wake of the past election, I found myself again feeling alone and far from home, but in more of a grand metaphysical sense. I felt isolated from the direction of progress and compassion that I naively hoped our country was moving towards, and so in the back of my mind, I remembered the Unitarian Universalist Church and tuned in to the live stream following the election. Now, here is where I have a confession to make. It may surprise and shock you to know that I wear a mask indoors around large groups of people. I do so for a number of reasons, but while most people accept it or ignore it, some will make comments or mutter under their breath, and so tuning into that live stream, I immediately noticed that there were a couple other masks in the audience. And as I went ahead and watched the other sermons, I continued to see them, and while it was a small thing, signaled to me that this is probably the open and welcoming space that I always assumed it was. My first service that Sunday reinforced what I'd assumed all along. These are good people with inclusive values. Shoot, you've got pride flags hanging everywhere, and that's pretty great. The songs and sermons and conversations with lovely people continue to make me feel welcome and included, and joining the Climate Action Ministry group and the archives teams have proved to be even more of a source of connection. And I thank you for being the wonderful people I figured you'd be in welcoming me to this congregation. And I light this chalice in gratitude for this church community and the good people everywhere.
We are not bound together by creed and specific list of things. We all believe exactly the same way We are united by shared values expressed in our 7 principles and by the commitments we make to each other about what creates this community. To name that commitment, will you join together in person and online and speak our covenant aloud as one? We gather in fellowship to speak the truth to each other, to reach out and touch one another, to care with each other, and to seek the truth divine. So be it.
Man, it felt so. I came here early enough and bleary enough that I didn't notice there is a huge patch of flowers just outside the front door. And before the 9 o'clock service, stepped back as if they had just appeared this morning since the time that I arrived. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to be surrounded by that sort of beauty, to pause and notice it. In especially a moment in a world that feels a little bit overwhelming, a little bit too much, maybe? Yeah. Folks online, for the record, there was a sort of a disappointed murmuring in the room. In that moment, in this moment, when sometimes the world is too much with us, the invitation is the same as it always is, to come in. To come into this house, to come into this place that we make holy by our presence, to come in, to arrive in this moment with all of your vulnerabilities and your strengths and your fears and anxieties and loves and hopes. Because the work here is not to hide or pretend. The work this morning, at least for this hour, is not to put on a face and a mask of perfection and everything is fine. The work here is not to be anything other than who you are and who you're called to be. So come into this place where we can heal and be healed and forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified and the human is celebrated and the compassionate is expected. Together we make this a holy place, remembering together who we are and hoping our way towards the people we're becoming.
It's a treacherous chancel. Will you rise in body or in spirit and join in our opening song?
A song of peace for
join me in a spirit of prayer and meditation. Sometimes I think that invitation is a kind of a remembering. It's a trying to remember our way back to ourselves again, to make a space, to make a quiet, to make a spaciousness on the inside in a way that lets us find our way back to ourself, back to now. I always feel like that invitation is incomplete. It feels like such an abstract thing to say. But really what it is practice. Spiritual practice that we do one week after another, finding that feeling and quality of experience which is rarely found in everyday life, in the noise and the storm of the world. We call it by different names. We make sense of it in wildly different ways, maybe even you from the person sitting next to you. And we don't argue over that, who's got it just right. Instead, we get to the practice again and again. Spirit of life and love, known by many names. We acknowledge that each of us has fallen short of the person that we hope to be. Each of us has started and stopped and made wrong turns. Each of us has spoken an unkind word, closed a door, burned a bridge, and we name this because this is what it is to be human. Nothing's gone terribly wrong. This is what it is to be human. And in this hour, our prayer and our hope is to be called home to ourselves again and again. To remember that the Spirit of love does not call only to the qualified, but qualifies the called. The poet Rebecca Baggett writes these words of her reflection, this called testimony, which she addresses to her daughters. I want to tell you that the world is still beautiful. I tell you that. Despite the slow poisons seeping from old and hidden sins into our air, soil, water, despite the thinning film that encloses our aching world, despite my own terror and despair, I want you to know that spring is no small thing. I want to tell you that the river rocks shine like God. I want to remind you to look beneath the grass, to note the fragile hieroglyphs of ant, snail, beetle. I want to say, like the poet, that I am waiting for a great and a common tenderness, that I still believe we are capable of attention, and that anyone who notices the world must want to save it. We'll be together in silence for a few moments. Take a breath with me. I invite you to bring to mind those things for which you're joyful, things you're grateful for. What is it, whether it's grand or simple, that lifts you up? What is it that makes you smile? And then, without letting go of that, And without weighing them against each other, bring to mind those things for which you grieve or worry. The things that slow you down, that keep you up at night. And to sit in that in-between place, the place of holding both of them, of knowing that you're not just your joy and you're not just your grief. All of it together. And for all those joys and sorrows on our heart, we hold this compassionate space with love. We make this space each week. For those meeting in person, to come forward as you feel moved, starting with the back of the room, then the sides, then the front. And to take a stone from the bowl and let it symbolize the joys and the sorrows you carry with you. And then place them into the earth, held in something larger and older than any of us. The internal landscape made visible, the individual and private collections of our sorrows and hopes, visible for everyone to see, together for everyone to see. This week, we hold in great love and care Jack Rummel, who passed away this month. For all those joys and sorrows, we hold this space with love, and I invite you to come forward as you feel moved. my friend and colleague, Reverend Jordan Nelson Long, writes this. She speaks my mind with it too. She says, as a religious leader in the progressive tradition, understand this clearly. I am not at all committed to hearing all perspectives equally. In fact, I think the false equivalence of hatred versus welcome, of fear versus possibility, the false equivalence of nihilism versus constructivism, the false equivalence of libertarian self-interest versus collectivism, the false equivalence of causing harm and externalizing the consequences versus covenant. This is a fundamental perversion of democracy, of love, of the promise of America, and anything beneficial it's ever stood for. We can agree that there is a spectrum rather than a zero-sum sides of any particular issue, but make no mistake, I orient myself on a place on that spectrum, and it's unlikely to be the middle. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. And I align myself with others who do the same. I'm not up here saying this for you. I'm kind of expecting you all to go do this too. And to name this, to say this, right? To argue this is not about politics infecting religion, which somehow has nothing to do with the actual lived life in the world. To name this is at the core of our values, the core of our theology. For Protestant Christians since the time of the Reformation, one slogan, one rallying cry, one theological argument has been the priesthood of all believers. And the most Unitarian Universalists may not quite be Christian these days. The core idea behind that declaration is one we absolutely still affirm, that there is no hierarchy of holiness, that all of us have direct access to the divine. There's no mediator, and there's no special privilege or prerogative available only to our clergy. In making this argument, Martin Luther and then the generations of Protestant and then Catholic theologians who followed, they were looking back to ancient Israel to talk about the priesthood of all believers. They were looking back 2,500 years ago, long before the Jewish diaspora, before Judaism centered around synagogues led by rabbis. These Christian theologians were looking back in the Hebrew scriptures to this time when there was a special priestly class of people who had special access to the holy. And they said, well, look, there's not a need for a mediator or a priest to interpret God or Scripture. Each person, by direct experience and conscience, can experience all matters of ultimacy and morality. In the 20th century, the Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams called for us to take a step further. This is a theology-heavy sermon, but you're with me. James Luther Adams looked back to ancient Israel also, and he said, we're not just called to be priests. It's not just that we're all priests. It's not just that all of us, any of us, can encounter the divine, the holy, whatever name you give it. He said, also, every one of us is a prophet. And he's talking about this again in the sense of the Hebrew scriptures, not a prophet like making predictions about the future, not like science fiction and not like Dune, there's a prophecy, not that. The Hebrew prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Amos, Jonah, the list goes on, spoke truth to power because they listened to the still small voice of conscience. They listened, they paid attention, they spoke what it was to be human in an inhumane world. And for the biblical prophets, that was giving voice to the voice of God. One commentator talks about this in that context, that For them, God was not the detached, unmoved mover of Aristotelian tradition. In other words, God's not just hanging back, watching the universe go by, sort of seeing it happen. For the ancient prophets, God was the most moved mover, deeply affected by human deeds. For the prophets, God was involved in human history, not to direct it and shape it. The involvement was an emotional entanglement. God suffers when human beings suffer. Through that lens, the prophet is not a messenger conveying something, not an oracle or a seer predicting the future, not an ecstatic having this experience. What the prophet is a witness to the divine pathos, one who bears testimony to God's concern for human beings. Let's make that more practical. This lens of what it is to be a prophet, this was the approach of the rabbi and activist Abraham Joshua Heschel, who fled Germany in the 1930s and came to America. And for him, what it meant to be a practicing Jew, what it meant to live a religious life, was to participate in our shared life as human beings, to participate in the divine pathos. Makes it sound grand. What it really means is God's love and concern for humanity. For Heschel, that's what it was to be religious, was to be connected, to be a part. He marched in Selma and wrote that for many of us, the march from Selma to Montgomery was about protest and prayer. Legs are not lips, and walking is not kneeling, and yet our legs uttered songs. Even without words, our march was worship. I felt my legs were praying. His daughter, Susanna Heschel, herself a brilliant scholar of Judaism, writes that as much as, for Abraham Joshua Heschel, as much as the Selma March was for him a religious experience, religion without indignation at political evils was impossible. Justice was not simply an idea or a norm, but a divine passion. Abraham Joshua Heschel said in the years that followed, to speak about God and remain silent on Vietnam is blasphemous. And this for us, though we may use very different language to talk about some of these things, this for us is the key. What he's pointing to is that at the center of the work for justice, propelling it or animating it, or at least giving it a nudge forward, there's a spiritual experience that lights the spark of it. Sometimes I think reading about other religious traditions or about prophets 2.5 millennia gone, it seems that the thing that comes first is the idea, the theology. There's something you're supposed to do, and the prophets did it. Sometimes in the religious tradition, maybe that you were raised in or came out of, you might have been told that you were supposed to act in a certain way, and the rationale for why was going to come later. Sometimes even, I think, for folks who are progressives, there's the sense that you're supposed to be passionate about certain concerns in a certain way. And even if you don't actually feel that way, you should just go along with it. You'll find out why later. But Heschel says, no. As a devout Jew, he says, you've got this backwards. It's not that the action you're supposed to do comes first. The work for justice begins with a feeling. And that feeling isn't just a passing thing. The feeling is deeper than that. For him, it's divine. It's a participation in the care for all of humanity. It's taking seriously that every other person is as real as you are. And what then? And for him, in his language, in his tradition, That means participating in God's love and care for humanity. And the work for justice then begins from the inside out, begins with feeling, begins with heartbreak, begins with a heart opening that's so powerful, so all-consuming that he speaks of it in transcendent language. This is what it is to be a prophet, he says. To see through the story that a society tells itself about why the way things are is the way they have to be. To be a prophet is to be impatient with injustice, to be unwilling to use social niceties to politely ignore how society treats some people as disposable, leaves people behind, less than human. Prophecy, writes Heschel, is the voice that God has lent to the silent agony. And only in this heart opening do we have the energy, the fuel, the thing bigger than us that sustains us in the work. The prophet, says Heschel, says no to their society and condemns its habits, its assumptions, its complacency, its waywardness. And all of that begins in the lived and felt experience of participation in something bigger than any one of us. We feel it first. This is my song. This is my song. Not, this is my set of rational arguments, duly footnoted. This is my song. I feel this. That people everywhere, like me, are like me. Walter Brueggemann, the theologian and scholar of the Hebrew prophet, I told you this is a theology heavy one, right? He says the church today, which immediately needs a footnote because the church does not mean the building. The church is just us. There's not some church other than us being the church. That's it. We today have the same 3 prophetic tasks as Hebrew prophets did 100 generations ago. And it begins, he writes, with realism when the world is locked in ideology. Our society, he writes, like ancient society, lives in this bubble of illusionary ideology. He talks about ideology as this commitment to a view of social reality, even if data tells us to the contrary. Ideology is that they are stealing our jobs. Ideology is that they are poisoning our culture. Ideology is that they are taking our children from us. Ideology is that private gratification is more important than the common good. Ideology is that freedom means you can do whatever you want. But the fact is that system of fearful greed, of othering, does not work or make anyone happy. It is fraudulent. And that's what realism is. Realism is not some sophisticated political ideology. Realism is simply that everyone else is just as real as you are. What then? For Brueggemann, the second task then, after realism, when the world is locked in ideology, is the work of grief when the world is in denial. Those ideological passions require a practice of denial, a refusal of the facts on the ground. To be locked in those sorts of ideologies requires a denial of the essential humanity of women, of queer people, trans people. It requires you not to see each other as real. And letting go of that ideology, letting go of that means facing loss. It means grief at lost futures, grief at the beautiful possibilities of the present. grief at a planet dying around us. But grief matters here because the prophetic task in that moment isn't resentment. It's not to move through the world privately angry that you've got it right and everyone else has got it wrong. What jerks. The task is to actually engage the pain that's underneath, to see the world gone wrong and let yourself be heartbroken without breaking. And then, essentially, to move to hope when the world's locked in despair. Hope there doesn't mean that everything's going to turn out okay. Hope is the plausibility of the possible. Hope is that things don't have to be like this. Brueggemann wrote this book called Reality, Grief, and Hope, 3 Urgent Prophetic Tasks. I think I've shared that years ago when she was reading it, my wife, Reverend Terry, left it in the church office where we were then, and I found a reminder, a post-it on her purse at home in order not to forget next time. And the post-it said, "Go find reality, grief, and hope at church." And of course, that is church's job, and here's the thing. Church is just us. It's just us. It's our job. The order, I think, matters. Reality, grief, and hope. I don't think I can get to real hope without facing reality and grief first. In the midst of that, the Talmud, a set of Jewish commentaries, declares you're not required to finish your work. You're not, that is, required to do all of this perfectly, completely. But also, you're not free to stop doing it either. I'm trying to explain this to my kids with their homework. Maybe it works better with reality, grief, and hope. You're not going to finish that work, but that is what the work is, all the way through. You can't save the whole world personally. You do what you can. And you work to help heal the world, not because you're going to complete that task and have failed if you don't, but because you can make a difference. When Ingrid and her family lived here in sanctuary for 4 years, we did not solve the immigration question in this country, but we made a profound and life-changing difference for them. And the end of that story is not written, and the risks she faces now are more real and present maybe than they were even then. And we'll keep on doing what we can. But I think there's another reason not to stop from that work. It's not just that it matters and that it makes a difference. It's also that by doing that work, we become the people who do it. Instead of shutting our eyes to the reality of what's right in front of us, we face it. Instead of being in denial about the plain fact of inhumanity, we let ourselves see it and grieve it, and then work for something else. And the world skips past that human heartbreak and on to the next thing to be angry or upset or soothed or pacified or avoidant or numbed about. And we become people who stop and see and grieve and go to work. And that's not easy. And sometimes that looks like foolishness. And always that means hope. A possibility of becoming the person that you're becoming. And the world too. Amen.
At last summer's General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association, the gathered body of delegates affirmed that love is the center of our faith. for each one of our shared values, it is fueled by love. So this search for justice, this relentless pursuit of the world that we believe in, this determination to hold on to hope, to see it wherever we can find it, is fueled by love. So in that spirit, will you rise in body or in spirit, and let's sing together. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead. Repeat after me. Don't give up hope. Don't give up hope. You're not alone. You're not alone. Don't you give up. Don't you give up. Keep moving on. Keep moving on. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Lift up your eyes. Lift up your eyes. Don't you despair. Don't you despair. Look up ahead. Look up ahead. The path is there. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. I know you're scared. I know you're scared. Well, I'm scared too. And I'm scared too. But here I am. But here I am. Right next to you. Right next to you. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot, and lead with love. You gotta put one foot, and lead. One more time. You gotta put one foot, and lead with love. You gotta put one foot, and lead with love.
This month, our offertory goes to the World Land Restoration Volunteers. And we know that group so well from our dear Amy and her husband, Ed Self. Mostly Ed, I guess. And we're going to see a short video explaining that.
How does change happen? You have to do more than put a pro-environment bumper sticker on your car. You have to get out there, dig in, and get some trees planted, get some seeds spread on the land. Change can happen one drainage at a time. Wildlands Restoration Volunteers is a nonprofit based in Colorado that works on ecological and trail restoration.
Yeah, 2 more.
Today we are in Stringtown Gulch, which is one of the areas just outside Fort Collins. This area was a really high-intensity fire where all of the vegetation on the hillside, including the roots and the seed stock in the soil, were burned.
We're out here today because of the Cameron Peak fire, the biggest fire in Colorado history, 326 square miles.
We're out here trying to stop erosion that is going to happen when we have heavy summer rains. These open spaces really are getting hammered by our use, and most of them need our help. Healing the land and building community, those really are equal parts of our mission. Building community means that we need to bring everyone with us. Really, the only way that we're going to change everything is each one of us deciding to take one little piece of action.
Okay, you're coming all the way over. One more. There we are. Did it. Downside.
So even though you may not be able to solve all of the world's problems, we can solve the problems that we're having here on this land 1 acre at a time.
We really, really appreciate everything you're doing for us. So we can't thank you enough. We appreciate your help. And you've been very dedicated. Keep coming back.
Every single project we do, 10, 20, 30 people at a time, that's how change happens.
I invite you to give as generously as you are able. And for those online, you can use the QR code or find a link in the video description. And for those gathered in person, you can scan that QR code or make a donation as the other ushers now pass the baskets. And may our gifts be used to enact justice, bringing peace and love to the Boulder community, and help restore our wild lands.
The poet writes, I want to tell you that the world is still beautiful. I want to say that I am waiting for a great and a common tenderness, and that I still believe anyone who notices the world must want to save it. Our service ends, and that work begins again. Amen. And go in peace.
Will you rise in body or in spirit so we can close in song?